Okay, you say that you want to be further educated, but since you haven't replied to my last private message to you, and since making a coherent argument in the comments is difficult due to the sheer amount of information, I've decided to make a video response to your video, and it would make me really happy if you approved it. First, it bothers me a little how you refer to this conflict between religion and the lack thereof as a religious war. Bad wording, first of all. And also, you continue on to act as if it's completely one-sided, with the atheists attacking the poor, persecuted Christians. And there is a conflict, I'm not going to deny that, but it's a conflict between reason, and I don't want to say religion, but blind faith, I guess. The refusal to be reasonable, and the rejection of science. Now, I'm not really a fan of the amazing atheist who is the only atheist you mentioned in this video. Which sort of makes me think that he's the only atheist you've ever bothered to listen to. Believe me, there are others out there who make their points in a much more polite way, and I don't know if you've found any of them, but it sort of seems to me that you haven't. But either way, there's still the fact that our human ideas of what a god, if one did in fact exist, might be like, are very mystical and childish. And I think that was the point the amazing atheist was trying to make. Most atheists will readily admit that we don't know for sure if there is a God or not. We don't believe there is one, of course, because there is no reason to believe. Christians like you, on the other hand, already have two problems working against you and your argument. First, you assume there must be a God, and you discuss the supposed existence of one as if you knew for a fact that it did exist. Second, you make this imaginary God petty. You give this imaginary God petty human characteristics, and then try to tell atheists that your God is not only all-powerful, but all-loving as well, and a being who far surpasses humans in intelligence and rationality. And by doing this, you've created for yourself a God who is a logical contradiction, and therefore cannot exist, in the same way that a square circle cannot exist. Now, what really bothered me about your video is that you actually try to make the claim that the Big Bang Theory and the theory of evolution are as baseless as your creationism, and that simply is not true, and if you had actually done your research like you claimed, you'd know this. The theories of evolution and the Big Bang are formed according to observable evidence. Scientists can formulate theories on how our universe began, and how life arose, and then continued to evolve, based on how the universe and everything in it functions now. What creationists use to support their beliefs is the Bible, a few misconstrued facts, and outright lies. So when you say, science doesn't have all that much proof either, you sound simply delusional, for lack of a better word. Because, let's see, modern science versus holy book, ancient holy book, written by superstitious nomads. However could we decide? Science, it's only given us every single technological advancement of modern times. Science has only saved millions upon millions of lives through discoveries in medicine. And we compare that to the Bible, one of the greatest excuses for wars and hatred our species has ever come up with. Yeah, it's such a difficult decision. But please, note the sarcasm. As for your evolution is just a theory nonsense, well, if I needed any more proof that you're as ignorant of science as every other creationist out there, this certainly does the trick. Now, I've already explained this to you, but since you failed to respond, I'm going to go over it again. First of all, within the scientific community, theory means something much different than how people like you and me would use it in everyday conversation. This is the basic definition of what a scientific theory is. A well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world, or an organized system of accepted knowledge that applies in a variety of circumstances to explain a specific set of phenomena. Basically, Brandon, to say that something is a scientific theory is the same as saying that all the known evidence supports it. And of course, scientific theories don't become theorems, ever. A scientific theory can be disproved, but it can never be graduated into some supposed higher level. They will never become laws either. Laws are simply descriptions of what we observe. Theories are explanations of those descriptions. Scientists use theories to explain why things work the way they do. As for your claim that those who believe evolution are so easily misled and apparently haven't done their research, oh my god, the overwhelming majority of Scientists believe evolution. Are you honestly going to say that they haven't done their research? I mean, it's pretty clear that you haven't, which makes you a liar. Now, when you say that even Darwin didn't believe his theory, you're absolutely and completely wrong. The quote you're referring to is this one. He says, "To suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances, for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selections, seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree." Yes, Brandon, that quote does sound very convincing to your point of view. But if you actually researched the subject, you'd have found the rest of that quote, because Darwin goes on to say, "When it was first said that the sun stood still and the world turned round, the common sense of mankind declared the doctrine false, but the old saying, the voice of the people equals the voice of God, as every philosopher knows, cannot be trusted in science. Reason tells me that if numerous gradations from a simple and imperfect eye to one complex and perfect can be shown to exist, each grade being useful to its possessor, as it is certain the case, if further the eye ever varies and the variations be inherited, as is likewise certainly the case, and if such variations should be useful to any animal under changing conditions of life, then the difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex eye could be formed by natural selection should not be considered as subversive to the theory." Okay, so maybe Darwin actually knew what he was talking about. He did not deny his theory. He believed it, which means I've just disproved your so-called truth by showing you the rest of the quote that you didn't read because you didn't do your research. As for your critique of the Big Bang Theory, research it. Your explanation fails in so many ways. Also, you do realize that it was a Catholic, a Christian, and a theist who originally developed the concept. So, no offense, Brandon, but it obviously doesn't even contradict your belief in a God. So why even bother insisting that it's wrong? Especially when there is evidence supporting the idea and no evidence supporting a 7-day creation. Now, I can't speak for all atheists, but I don't call Christians narrow-minded and stubborn for believing in a God. In fact, I don't think that all Christians are narrow-minded. There are plenty of intelligent, open-minded Christians out there. My sister's actually one of them, and I definitely respect her. I do call Christians, as well as members of other religions, narrow-minded and stubborn when they insist on not only believing such nonsense like creationism, but they try to force it into our schools and disguise it as actual science, which is laughable. As for theories being made up by ordinary men, or so you put it, this is true. But so is your religion, Brandon, and your religion has no proof, no evidence whatsoever backing up its extraordinary claims. Also, everything within science has been discovered and defined and explained by ordinary people. You don't reject a theory because it was postulated by an ordinary human being. Because not only will you have to reject the entirety of science, but all of mathematics as well and every other bit of knowledge we have. Everything we've come up with has been come up with, obviously, by humans. And when you say that the Bible is proof, just wow. What's stopping others from using, say, the Quran as proof of their worldview, or the ancient myths of the Greeks and the Romans? After all, these things all have the same amount of credibility as the Bible, so by claiming that your specific holy book is legitimate proof, it makes me cringe. Also, you can't have faith and proof at the same time, so I honestly don't even know why you're bothering. And the reason actual historical texts are reliable, more so than the Bible, to a point, anything written by humans has a bias that one must be aware of. But the reason these are more reliable is due to the fact that we have multiple sources. Instead of just one text speaking about the Renaissance, we have thousands or something like that. I mean, the number is probably off. I said this before. But you do get the point. We have thousands written by different authors, each with their own point of view, which we can piece together to provide a more accurate view of history. The Bible does not have any external sources backing it up. Finally, I just want to address the manner in which you make these videos. When you say things like, oh, you can try to argue with what I'm saying, but I don't know why you would even try because you can't, because it's truth, you come across as incredibly arrogant. Now, arrogance in and of itself is not a bad thing when someone has a legitimate reason to be proud of themselves. But arrogance and ignorance, they're not an attractive combination, Brandon. Just thought I'd let you know.